Earlier this evening, I spoke to Pippa Binham, who's a wedding planner at Nova Wedding Planning, and I asked her for her reaction to the story.
It is a very extreme example, clearly. I mean, if you look at this couple, they are clearly at loggerheads. The bride, she doesn't maybe want to go through with the deed herself and maybe unsure about the marriage. We don't know what's behind this. They could be an arranged marriage or something like that. Right. So I suppose my reaction to it is feeling sorry for both parties, really, because we don't know what antecedents may have preceded this to make her think that actually texting is probably more important than embracing her new loved one, So,
well, I mean, my thoughts were, if she's so addicted to her mobile phone, and a lot of people are, there might have been one or two clues beforehand. You'd think, perhaps.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe he asked her by text. We don't know.
Have you ever come across anything like this before?
Not to this extent. No, not at all. I mean, the tensions within the wedding and prior to the wedding are extraordinarily common. They happen in absolutely every wedding that I have, a hand in. And it's part of our role as wedding planners, not just to kind of help people through the normal practical process of planning a wedding, but also to be counsellors for them as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
In terms of this wedding, this is a very extreme example of what can go wrong if, two parties come to loggerheads at the end of the day. I mean, in terms of the statistics, they're quite interesting in that only a third of couples do end up having sex on a wedding night, normally because most of them are too tired, probably.
From a long day, and a lot of alcohol, I would imagine, gets consumed. How long does it take then, on average, to plan a wedding?
Well, most people say allow 6 months to a year. Right. Some brides allow 2. Yeah. Some only have a matter of weeks. So it really does vary, but in terms of the kind of nice sort of time, a year is the best, I suppose.
I suppose a lot depends on the kind of wedding you want to have, though, doesn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
If it's going to be a big family wedding with, 100 or so guests, then the venue, I mean, often venues I hear can be booked up years in advance. So if there's somewhere you specifically wanted, then that will dictate how long you might have to wait to get married.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, many venues, especially across Kent is very popular for weddings, get booked up many years in advance, and I have brides coming to me looking for 2017, 2018 very, very frequently. And the thing is that I think the shorter the lead time before a wedding, the more stress that can incur on a couple as well. So I mean, this may be an arranged marriage, they may not have had a lot of time to plan it, they may not know each other that well, and it can come to the crunch that actually these tensions spill over and lead to the worst case scenario here, which is divorce. So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. What are the things that can and do often go wrong then? I guess there's stress from there's a huge financial investment in a wedding. I mean, they're not cheap, are they? Certainly if you're doing a big sort of family wedding, inviting all your friends and family along. But what are the pitfalls people watch out for?
Yeah, I suppose the financial aspects of the wedding are one of the greatest challenges that couples face, because so much is spent on a wedding these days. In terms of other kind of hotspots, probably families getting involved is the other key area for tensions arising when they potentially put their feelings about how the wedding should go, who should be invited, where people should be seated according to the bride and groom, just in terms of the families getting over involved in the wedding, that can be a real kind of hot point.
Is that something you would advise against, though, or what would be your advice on that?
I suppose my advice would be on that is for couples potentially to bear in mind that actually the wedding is theirs, and say in the nicest possible way to their families, look, we've decided to get married. This is our day. And actually, we will respect some of the things that you're saying to us and bear them in mind, but you have to let us make the ultimate decision here.
Yeah, I know, but it's still very difficult.
It is.
Well, I mean, if mum is very passionate about auntie being invited and you've not seen auntie for 30 years.
Absolutely. I mean, it may be that our guests are being invited that the couple know very little of, but that happens because the parents are maybe paying financially towards it or some reason like that. It can be very useful to have a wedding planner, not just as someone to organise things on that basis, but also to act as a buffer for families, because we can act as a mediator on their behalf. They tell us their problems and we can kind of help mediate between the two parties without things spilling over into huge heated arguments, hopefully.
It's Pippa's fault. It's Pippa. Blame Pippa.
Exactly. I said they should be sat there. It's fine.
What about on the day itself then? What are the things that can go wrong on the day? I mean, everyone's hoping for the perfect weather, and that's one thing that we've got no control over. So setting that aside, and I know that can be a big disappointment when you've got a fantastic venue and you can't get outside for the photographs because the weather's pouring down. But that aside, what are the other things that can go wrong on the day?
Well, absolutely. The list is limitless, unfortunately. And that's what we're called in to do as planners very frequently, to troubleshoot when things arise that you can't anticipate and you have to deal with there and then. Very frequently you get photographers being lost, people queued due to traffic jams on the roads, brides being late due to their makeup having not been done right. The list is endless. I suppose the main problem at weddings is them lagging behind. And so that's what we're also there to do, to make sure that they run to time so that the couples get the most out of the day possible.
That's got to be difficult, though, because every wedding I've ever been to runs late.
Absolutely. And if you think if something runs late, then the food can spoil, they won't get the most out of their music, all of those sort of things can be real, you're losing money effectively by having your day run late. So it can be a very useful thing to have it run on time.
And, I mean, as you mentioned earlier statistics about the wedding night itself. There are different kinds of weddings that I've been to where sometimes not early in the evening, but certainly before the end of the evening, the bride and groom go off and everyone sees them go off. They head off to a fantastic hotel, and then from there, the next day, everyone to their honeymoon. And other times, you see the bride and groom there almost at the end clearing up. You know, I mean, you still think, what are you still doing? Almost seeing their guests off.
Absolutely.
I mean, do you have any advice on that?
I think it's a real...
Certainly when it comes to, if they've got plans later.
I think it's a real generational thing. So you will find that older couples will tend to probably leave a wedding slightly earlier and they'll do the whole formal goodbye, whereas the younger couples these days tend to party on with their guests right until the very end, and they love that, and there are those aspects of having to clear up afterwards. Unfortunately, the practicalities of life kick in, so unless you've got a wedding planner to help do that.
Sure. I mean, would you say you've seen different trends come into weddings over the years? Are the way people approach things different now to perhaps 10 years ago plus?
I would say it's changing all the time. I'd say certainly the amount that is being spent on weddings is ever increasing because they're becoming more in events of themselves, and everything is kind of ramped up on the day from all of the different suppliers that might have, and you find people trying to outdo each other in terms of the things which are at the weddings. And so in terms of the time that we talked about earlier that people allow to plan their weddings, it's getting greater because people are saving for longer to achieve that dream wedding at the end of the day. But with that obviously comes a greater worry about the cost and greater tensions arising between the couple. So it's a real balancing act, and it has changed incredibly over the last 15 years. My parents' generation, they had a quickie registry office do and down the pub, and that was what they did.
Was probably every bit as important and memorable to them as the big, the big fantastic party.
Exactly.
Okay, a big question: the average price of a wedding?
These days, it's about £25,000.
That's a huge amount when you consider it's just one day.
That's a deposit on a house.
Oh yeah.
So absolutely.
It's fantastic holidays for years to come. I mean, it's not a fantastic holiday. It's It's many years worth.
Yes, and yet more people are getting married still, which is one of the most surprising things, that actually marriage, the rates are going up. So are divorce rates, but marriage rates too are still increasing.
And of course, the venues that people get married in now are many and varied.
Absolutely. I mean, you could get married potentially from anywhere on a beach, some sun-soaked island, to, I know couples do bungee jumping and, get married by the vicar as you're going down to earth.
Yeah.
But,
So what I will ask you before you go, Pippa, I mean, you must have seen one or two funny things happen at weddings, things that perhaps weren't planned, and it sometimes make the wedding more memorable as a result. But what would you...
Absolutely. I'd say cakes are a disaster area waiting to happen.
Have you seen cakes go?
I've seen cakes go many times when people have had a bit too much to drink.
There's not just the cake that's in tears, it's the bride.
I was going to say, the dancing gets out of hand and the cake goes. Nightmares. There's nothing you can do about it.